Welcome to another video project carport in which I would like to go into more detail about the construction of a retaining wall in the previous video 2.0. Have you already seen how the wall is built from the beginning in time-lapse mode has been completed? And in this video I would like to simply explain the details up close again. In the background you can already see some pictures from my photo series starting from the moment the construction pit was excavated has been done, and I have started to set the markings for the later foundation of the concrete formwork wall. The marked areas were excavated with an excavator. Excavated, frost protection introduced and compacted, and then filled with concrete. Refilled in order to then set the retaining wall on it. After the foundation has dried, I started to work on the formwork blocks, to be set along a guideline in mortar, ensuring that everything is level and plumb. Of course, especially with the first row, one should pay attention because then the subsequent rows just need to be stacked. Since the retaining wall is directly on a slope, there is an area of very clay soil. A distance of about 1.5 meters regularly, small HT pipes were installed. What we can see here should serve the purpose that, if necessary, standing water on the back of the wall does not increase the pressure too much to bring the wall to collapse, but rather that the water flows over, can then simply flow into the open area this way. Through the holes of the formwork blocks I then placed rebar. Every second hole should also have a long hole in the concrete floor. I drilled and then inserted reinforcement steel that is about 1 meter long. The top measures just under 80 centimeters, so the entire wall is then height is reinforced parallel to the construction of the wall, that is, for setting the blocks. I have already started the filling on top, which means the concrete. The screed was mixed slightly wetter than earth moist in my case, so that the well compacted and then already introduced into the holes of the formwork blocks after setting the last row, I then began to fill the concrete up to the top. I left a small area open to fill in later, very fluid concrete just to achieve a smooth finish. Here, as you can clearly observe, you can see the rear side of this structure, the wall, and piece by piece the whole thing was then everything filled in by hand here. Once again the picture of the HT pipes. To drain the standing water at the back in order to relieve the pressure, the wall, as already mentioned, will not be so large. I have the areas. Afterwards, I exposed it again and then laid down a dimpled membrane to prevent dirt from getting in and to avoid blockages in total. I then installed 4 such drains in total altogether. I then finished the last good 5 to 10 centimeters of the formwork blocks the whole thing was filled with relatively fluid concrete and then smoothed out with the trowel, that it results in a nice smooth surface on which I can later, at some point you can simply just place the cover stones on top. Overall there is of course quite a bit of material needed for the whole thing. Approximately 2.5 pallets of concrete were used for that. I have processed approximately about 3 tons just for the concrete wall. There are also 2 more pallets of formwork blocks, so 100 pieces of them. I really needed 2 stones, but they broke while I was working on them, and those are exactly the ones who were left over in the end. Here you can see the finished result. I have completely filled the formwork blocks with concrete. I filled in the top 5 to 10 centimeters depending on the situation, then also filled with liquid concrete and smoothed out. In some places you can still see the construction foam sticking out. I think that's a great trick to prevent the concrete from flowing out anywhere. One can simply fill it in with foam beforehand and then has no problems. In the next step I have on the back side of the formwork wall the drainage membrane has been installed on both sides. I have the membrane itself in place. The upper area, so that it doesn't fall over, simply use drywall screws. Screwed into the joints, that went quite well, and when the earth is filled in, it holds everything on its own and protects my wall accordingly. Soil against moisture and naturally against root systems, which is perspective, could most likely certainly grow back there again, possibly. After the wall had dried for a few days, we moved on to the next step. Indeed, the soil that I had to deal with at the foundation of the strip foundations had been excavated to be placed on the back side of the wall. For this I then used a mini excavator and the soil, lifted behind the wall piece by piece, excavated. Partially, yes, somewhat compacted the rest, but then we have to bring the elements. Regarding the excavation work, I would like to simply point out at this point, I had never operated an excavator before, but after about 10 minutes, The acclimatization period is going quite well, so whoever is considering it, sometimes a mini excavator is rented. That's really not a problem. You can easily teach yourself. You can see for yourself that I have wonderfully managed to move the earth to bring to the other side, and then also use the sign to address the subfloor, to pull off nicely clean and smooth, to create a good starting position to prepare the next steps in the carport project. To not miss any of my further steps, I simply recommend you subscribe to my channel. Subscribe, in which I will then regularly provide further construction progress updates. Will upload online very soon.